or good afternoon. It's actually 3:23, so good afternoon, and welcome to the OBX Wave Report for Christmas Day, December 25, 2022. I am Robert Scribbler, your wave reporter for the OBX Wave Report, and we're going to provide you with a basic overview of conditions for the Outer Banks, basic surfing and wave conditions and weather conditions for the Outer Banks. And as we always do, we're going to pull back and give you guys a larger picture of the North American weather patterns that influence waves in the Outer Banks and at the North Atlantic as well, and provide a weather and climate discussion as we talk waves. So we're going to do all the fun things. So welcome again to the OBX Wave Report, where we discuss waves, weather, climate, water sports, and beach lifestyle, and all the good things. So for our starting image today, we're going with a NOAA geo image satellite shot of the US East Coast. So you can see the US East Coast here very clearly in the satellite shot as the clouds have cleared off. To the west, we see some clouds and some snow cover on the land, which is a after effect of the recent bomb cyclone that formed up here over the Great Lakes and then tracked off to the northeast over Canada and brought so much in the way of wintry conditions for the United States and Canada during this Christmas holiday. And we won't be forgetting this storm soon because there were so many power outages and so much winter weather conditions all up and down both the East Coast and into the Ohio Valley and then stretching out across a large swath of the US. But for now, the storm itself is petering out over eastern Canada and is mostly a bygone. But it has left us some after effects, and some of these after effects are we're experiencing the Outer Banks are experiencing them now in the form of strong westerly winds, and you can see a kind of hint of these westerly winds in the satellite photo because as the cold westerlies flow out over the Atlantic Ocean and hit those warmer than normal waters, you get that interaction of cold and warm and dry and moist to form these long streamers of clouds that you see rushing out over the Atlantic Ocean here. And it's a very dramatic satellite shot, very beautiful satellite shot as we see that interaction. Looking at the infrared satellite shot, we can also see the frontal boundary, which is stalled out across the Gulf of Mexico, across Florida, and out here across the Atlantic. The swirl of the low pressure system, which was our bomb cyclone from just the past few days. Another impulse rushing down through a dip in the jet stream here toward the Mississippi River and Ohio River valleys, and a strong Pacific influx of moisture here affecting the Pacific Northwest. So that's the general weather conditions for the United States. And here in the Outer Banks, we're getting much clearer conditions. And then I just also wanted to provide you guys a wave model to show you what's going on for the Outer Banks as well. And what we see in the wave model is the swell is blown out toward the east. So the swell's generating near shore and pushing out offshore in the range of 3 to 5 foot just offshore, but with the swell moving away from the beach, the swell that's actually turning around to hit the beach is considerably reduced. We have smaller waves along the Outer Banks than even in the just offshore environment on the east-facing beaches. And for the south-facing beaches, some of the swell has turned in toward the south, and that swell is also ranging about 3 to 3.5 feet. But it's worth noting that the south-facing beaches at this time are the ones that are experiencing better surf conditions. Now, looking at our local picture of the Outer Banks, I'm just going to provide you with our 3 choice locations, and we're going to start off with Jeanette's Pier here. And conditions at Jeanette's Pier are cold, blown out, windy, and sunny. So Wave heights at Jeanette's Pier are right now in the 1 to 2 foot range, so very small, like a knee to maybe thigh high waves. The period for the primary swell is 16 seconds for those larger waves, the 1 to 2 foot waves, and then the secondary swell is coming in at 9 seconds. Winds are out of the west right now at 20 miles per hour, so very strong winds still coming out of the west, and that's an offshore wind here at Jeanette's Pier with that northeast cant to the coastline. Air temperatures are in the range of 38 degrees Fahrenheit, and ocean water temperatures are still cooling off in the range of 53 degrees Fahrenheit. So make sure you have your cold weather protection if you do go out today. And the weather conditions are windy, sunny, and the expected high for today is 38. And we've already reached that. Moving on down the beaches to Buxton, and I've called Buxton the big wave place for the Outer Banks, but that is not true today. Buxton is about the same as Jeanette's Pier, so no big waves for Buxton today. That should change as we progress into later on this week, but at present, waves at Buxton are also in the 1 to 2 foot range, with the primary swell coming in at 9 seconds, secondary swell coming in at 16 seconds. Winds are also out of the west, and that's offshore as well at 20 miles per hour. And pretty consistent offshore or westerly flow here at 20 miles per hour. The air temperature is 41 degrees Fahrenheit at Buxton. The ocean water temperature is considerably warmer at 61 degrees Fahrenheit. And the weather conditions at Buxton are also sunny, windy, and we've already reached the expected high for today at Buxton at 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, taking that right-hand turn down Route 12, and we are going to head on to Billy Mitchell Airport. And the beach is just off Billy Mitchell. And it is here at Billy Mitchell beaches that we encounter that swell coming in from the south. So those swells are turning into the shore with that westerly flow. And those swells for Billy Mitchell are in the range of 2 to 3 feet. So a little bit better, about some thigh to waist high, maybe a little bit larger sets coming in there. With the period for the primary swell for those larger 3 foot, maybe some 3.5 footers there at 9 seconds. And then for the secondary swell coming in at 5 seconds. Winds are also out of the west at 20 miles per hour, but with this shore facing mostly toward the south, that is a cross-shore flow for Billy Mitchell. Air temperatures are also in the range of 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and ocean water temperatures are in the range of 61. Weather conditions are sunny, windy, and we've already reached the expected high of 41 degrees for the beaches there at Billy Mitchell on the Outer Banks. So that's a quick summary of conditions at the Outer Banks for you guys on this Christmas day. So Merry Christmas to all you crazy surfers who are getting out there and braving the cold and maybe not so great wave conditions for the Outer Banks. My hat's off to you, and my best to you and your families as you enjoy some Christmas cheer, hopefully, and take part in some fun holidaying. So before I end, I do want to go through some of the larger, more prevailing weather conditions. This is a weather model image provided by Tropical Tidbits, which is a fantastic site for tracking all things weather, particularly tropical in nature. And I like to use it for just tracking weather generally, along with Earth Null School, which is also a fantastic resource. But right now we see the low pressure system, which caused so much travel trouble over the past few days, is now petering out here over eastern Canada, just east of the Hudson Bay region, west of the Baffin Bay region. We do have just some scattered precipitation along a large frontal boundary draping down from this low here across the Atlantic, near the eastern seaboard, across Florida and down into the Gulf of Mexico here. And then we have another impulse riding down a dip in the jet stream, which is going to bring some weather to the central US. It's not predicted to be anything anywhere near as crazy as this bomb cyclone was. So, but we do expect to see some wintry weather on the north side of the system and some rain on the south side. And again, we've got a big moisture flow coming into the Pacific Northwest as well. The jet stream here, I've been noting features in the jet stream, and it's pretty important to do so because it does give us an idea where the storms will tend to form. And lately, there's been this persistent dip in the jet stream over the central and US East, and that trough is provide a formation zone for numerous storm systems that come in here. We did have a very powerful bomb cyclone recently form in this big dip. And for the forecast, we are predicting storms to also form in this trough zone, but so far, none of these storms are predicted to be anything anywhere near as crazy as what we saw with the bomb cyclone that recently formed over the past few days. I'd also like to point out this dip in the jet stream that runs through the eastern North Atlantic near Europe. And this zone has been a, another persistent zone for storm formation as well. And in the global forecast system model, we do expect some powerful storms to form in this zone, which will have implications for wave conditions for the North Atlantic, particularly for Europe, but we might get some cross Atlantic swell from very powerful storms that are predicted to develop here in the north central Atlantic as this trough in the jet stream shifts back a little bit, and we get strong storm formation ranging from the central North Atlantic all the way up here toward the North Sea region. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then looking at, I just did also want to show you larger wind and swell conditions. So we do see winds coming in here from the west across the US East Coast, particularly here in the Outer Banks. And I'll just get a little snapshot for you guys of wind speed. So we got 20 miles per hour there at Jeanette's Pier, so concordant with the observations at the pier. And then much stronger winds offshore. Of course, these are all westerlies, so just all blowing offshore in the, looks like 30 to near gale force range from south to north. And then far up here in the North Atlantic near Iceland, we have some very powerful winds in the range of 64 miles per hour around a pretty deep low pressure system here just east of Iceland and north of Scotland and west of Scandinavia here. And these systems are also generating large swells for the central Atlantic as their wind blows. We'll go back to the wave models in a minute because I want to show you the predicted weather pattern for both the US East Coast and here up in the central North Atlantic. And the reason why I'm looking at the central North Atlantic is because recently we had a very large, very broad system basically create large waves all across the Atlantic. So it's one of the reasons why I look at the central North Atlantic for the context of the Outer Banks, as well as the near coastal environment here and in this trough zone where we're seeing these storms form. So I'm going to go ahead and advance these models. So we've got this impulse running down into the central US here, and nothing really too crazy. Looks like it's kind of peters out as it gets smashed between two high pressure systems down at the surface there. And then another impulse running in across the Great Lakes as a storm forms offshore, and that might be a wave generator for later this week. I think this is the primary wave generator that we're looking at for the Outer Banks later this week. I do want to call your attention to these storms that are forming west of England, and let's go ahead and back this model up a little bit. So off to the north, you've got a storm that's in the 987 millibar range. And then following it up, you've got another storm that forms in the 974 millibar range that then starts to drop into the 960s as it moves across Scotland and then backs up a little bit, also dropping further, 964 millibar range. And then you have this kind of swirl of storms off Iceland, Scotland, Ireland, and Scandinavia, just waiting for another storm to join. And that's what happens as we get another low here. So you end up with this kind of daisy chain of lows swirling around up there to the north and west of England in the North Atlantic. And so that is, yeah, that is a 959 millibar system, very powerful. 997 millibar system coming in through the central North Atlantic, just northeast of, I'm sorry, southeast of Newfoundland, and another low forming here to the south. And I'm just going to advance the model here as we've got a low coming into England, a 960 millibar low up here southeast of Iceland, as these storms kind of swirl around, and a 973 millibar storm that then drops down to the 960 millibar range as it swoops in toward England. So we just have a succession of very powerful storms predicted to run in through the between Christmas and New Year's timeframe. So something to watch for wave generation, particularly up here in the Northeast North Atlantic. And it's also worth noting that we also get another set of impulses running in here through the US East Coast. I'm backing the model up again so we can see a low here forming in the 1000 to 990 millibar range, dragging a front through the central and southeastern US as it kind of anchors this frontal boundary from up in Canada here. And then we have impulses forming along the frontal boundary as we get into the New Year's. And then we get some coastal influence here for the Outer Banks. And it's also worth noting that this high pressure system is also very deep out here. So you got trough, high, and with that trough and high influence, you also tend to get some windy conditions packed between both the storms and the high pressure system. And I'm just going to advance that as you watch that impulse move offshore and then another impulse begin to form again through the new year for the central and eastern US. So that's just a discussion of the prevailing weather patterns. I'm going to go back here and look at a wave model to finish up this wave report. So going to the ocean surface, and let's look at now. And so right now in the near coastal region, the Outer Banks is pretty calm. But even as we just look out into the further shore environment, the waves kick up considerably. And so significant wave heights in the range of 15 feet north and east of Bermuda here. We've got a zone where waves are in the near 18-foot significant wave height range. And then just east of Iceland, we've got significant wave heights in the 25-foot range. And I'm going to go ahead and advance this model so that we can see what happens both for the Outer Banks and in this region here near Europe. So even tomorrow, wave conditions for this daisy chain zone, I'm calling it, between Iceland, England, and Scandinavia is producing like nearly 28-foot wave height, significant wave heights. And calm conditions for the Outer Banks tomorrow. Let's advance to the 27th. And it's a little bit calmer up in this daisy chain zone. And then off the Outer Banks, seas are remaining in the 1 to 3 foot range again for the 27th. So nothing really significant for the Outer Banks at that point. And then we get a strong onshore flow here for Europe with significant wave heights offshore in the range of 20 feet. And then for the Outer Banks again, still small even for the 28th. So we're not really expecting waves to start to increase until later in the week here. And then getting into the 3-foot range near the Outer Banks by, let's see, we are all at the 29th. But notice that the swells are starting to come in again from offshore here, and that's basically the signal for the wave improvement. So we've got significant wave heights now in the range of 3 foot just off the Outer Banks with the swells coming in, and this will tend to improve wave conditions for the 29th as surf conditions are expected to improve from 28th slat to the 29th onward. And see, oh, we don't get one more. I am going to go ahead and go to Magic Seaweed so I can show you like a local wave model. So going to magicseaweed.com, and I'm just going to go to Buxton, which I'm calling the big wave spot for the Outer Banks, and look at the forecast here. So the wave models for Buxton do show waves improving from the 28th into the 29th for Buxton, and then also improving in through Friday and Saturday of next week. So Small wave conditions to persist over at least the next 3 days for the Outer Banks, but then expected to improve as you start to get more winds and swells coming in from off the Atlantic. So thank you for joining me for the Christmas episode of the OBX Wave Report. Please don't forget to check out Tropical Tidbits and MagicSeaweed.com, which are fantastic resources for waves and in general for surfers all across the world. I find it to be a wonderful tool. And also, please do not forget to do everything you can to help save our beautiful coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning. For our next report, I'm going to talk a little bit, I believe, about some surf gear, and we're going to do some unboxings. I guess we are in the Christmas season, so we might as well do a couple of little supplemental focuses on some gear here. And then also, of course, we're going to continue our wave reports remote for the Christmas holidays. And then after that, we're going to get back to the beaches.